I think the big mistake in schools is trying to teach children anything, and by using fear as the basic motivation. Fear of getting failing grades, fear of not staying with your class, etc. Interest can produce learning on a scale compared to fear as a nuclear explosion to a firecracker. The very meaninglessness of life forces man to create his own meaning. Children, of course, begin life with an untarnished sense of wonder, a capacity to experience total joy at something as simple as the greenness of a leaf. But as they grow older, the awareness of death and decay begins to impinge on their consciousness and subtly erode their joie de vivre, their idealism, and their assumption of immortality. As a child matures, he sees death and pain everywhere about him and begins to lose faith in the ultimate goodness of man. But if he's reasonably strong and lucky, he can emerge from this twilight of the soul into a rebirth of life's elation, both because of and in spite of his awareness of the meaninglessness of life. He can forge a fresh sense of purpose and affirmation. He may not recapture the same pure sense of wonder he was born with, but he can shape something far more enduring and sustaining. The most terrifying fact about the universe is not that it is hostile, but that it is indifferent. But if we can come to terms with this indifference and accept the challenges of life within the boundaries of death, however mutable man may be able to make them, our existence as a species can have genuine meaning and fulfillment. However vast the darkness, we must supply our own light. I do not always know what I want, but I do know what I don't want. If it can be written or thought, it can be filmed. If man merely thought about his impending termination and his terrifying insignificance and aloneness in the cosmos, he would surely go mad or succumb to a numbing sense of futility. Why, he might ask himself, should he bother to write a great symphony, or strive to make a living, or even love another, when he is no more than a momentary microbe on a dust mote whirling through the unimaginable immensity of space? Those of us who are forced by their own sensibilities to view their lives in this perspective, who recognize that there is no purpose they can comprehend, and that amidst a countless myriad of stars, their existence goes unknown and unchronicled, can fall prey all too easily to the ultimate anomaly. The world's religions, for all their parochialism, did supply a kind of consolation for this great ache. Observation is a dying art. If you can talk brilliantly about a problem, it can create the consoling illusion that it has been mastered. The great nations have always acted like gangsters, and the small nations like prostitutes. I've never been certain whether the moral of the Icarus story should only be, as is generally accepted, don't try to fly too high, or whether it might also be thought of as forget the wax and feathers and do a better job on the wings. A film is, or should be, more like music than like fiction. It should be a progression of moods and feelings. The theme, what's behind the emotion, the meaning, all that comes later. The dead only know one thing: it is better to be alive. If chess had any relationship to filmmaking, it would be in the way that it helps you develop patience and discipline in choosing between alternatives at a time when an impulsive decision seems very attractive. If you really want to communicate something, even if it's just an emotion or an attitude, let alone an idea, the least effective and least enjoyable way is directly. It only goes in about an inch. But if you can get people to the point where they have to think a moment what it is you're getting at, and then discover it, the thrill of discovery goes right through the heart. I never learned anything at all in school and didn't read a book for pleasure until I was 19 years old. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. The whole idea of God is absurd. If anything, 2001 shows what some people call God is simply an acceptable term for their ignorance. What they don't understand, they call God. Perhaps it sounds ridiculous, but the best thing that young filmmakers should do is to get a hold of a camera and some film and make a movie of any kind at all. The destruction of this planet would have no significance on a cosmic scale. You're an idealist, and I pity you as I would the village idiot. You sit at the board, and suddenly your heart leaps. Your hand trembles to pick up the piece and move it. But what chess teaches you is that you must sit there calmly and think about whether it's really a good idea and whether there are other, better ideas. The screen is a magic medium. It has such power that it can retain interest as it conveys emotions and moods that no other art form can hope to tackle. I have always enjoyed dealing with a slightly surrealistic situation and presenting it in a realistic manner. I've always liked fairy tales and myths, magical stories. I think they are somehow closer to the sense of reality one feels today than the equally stylized, realistic story in which a great deal of selectivity and omission has to occur in order to preserve its realist style. When a man cannot choose, he ceases to be a man. I've never achieved spectacular success with a film. My reputation has grown slowly. I suppose you could say that I'm a successful filmmaker in that a number of people speak well of me. But none of my films have received unanimously positive reviews, and none have done blockbuster business. Never, ever go near power. Don't become friends with anyone who has real power. It's dangerous. Think Schindler's List was about the Holocaust? That was about success, wasn't it? The Holocaust is about 6 million people who get killed. Schindler's List is about 600 who don't. Anything else? The lasting and ultimately most important reputation of a film is not based on reviews, but on what, if anything, people say about it over the years, and how much affection for it they have. One man writes a novel. One man writes a symphony. It is essential that one man makes a film. I don't have the slightest doubt that to tell a story like this, you couldn't do it with words. There are only 46 minutes of dialogue scenes in the film and 113 of non-dialogue. There are certain areas of feeling and reality, or unreality, or innermost yearning, whatever you want to call it, which are notably inaccessible to words. Music can get into these areas. Painting can get into them. Nonverbal forms of expression can. But words are a terrible straitjacket. It's interesting how many prisoners of that straitjacket resent its being loosened or taken off. There's a side to the human personality that somehow senses that wherever the cosmic truth may lie, it doesn't lie in A, B, C, D. It lies somewhere in the mysterious, unknowable aspects of thought and life and experience. Man has always responded to it. Religion, mythology, allegories. It's always been one of the most responsive chords in man. With rationalism, modern man has tried to eliminate it and successfully dealt some pretty jarring blows to religion. In a sense, what's happening now in films and in popular music is a reaction to the stifling limitations of rationalism. One wants to break out of the clearly arguable, demonstrable things, which really are not very meaningful or very useful or inspiring, nor does one even sense any enormous truth in them. Take a stress pill and think things over. The purpose of bayonet training is to awaken your killer instincts. The killer instinct will make you strong. If the meek ever inherit the earth, the strong will take it from them. The weak exist to be devoured by the strong. Every Marine must pack his own gear. Every Marine must be the instrument of his own salvation. Man isn't a noble savage. He's an ignoble savage. He is irrational, brutal, weak, silly, unable to be objective about anything where his own interests are involved. That about sums it up. I'm interested in the brutal and violent nature of man because it's a true picture of him. And any attempt to create social institutions on a false view of the nature of man is probably doomed to failure. The Committee for Long-Range Studies of the Brookings Institution prepared a report for NASA, warning that even indirect contact, i.e. alien artifacts that might possibly be discovered through our space activities on the Moon, Mars, or Venus, or via radio contact with an interstellar civilization, could cause severe psychological dislocations. The study cautioned that anthropological files contain many examples of societies sure of their place in the universe, which have disintegrated when they have had to associate with previously unfamiliar societies, espousing different ideas and different lifeways. Others that survived such an experience usually did so by paying the price of changes in values and attitudes and behavior. Born clever enough at gaining a fortune, but incapable of keeping one. For the qualities and energies which lead a man to achieve the first are often the very causes of his ruin in the latter case. It's absolutely true in every case that nobody likes a smartass. People react primarily to direct experience and not abstractions. It is very rare to find anyone who can become emotionally involved with an abstraction. The longer the bomb is around without anything happening, the better the job that people do in psychologically denying its existence. It has become as abstract as the fact that we're all going to die someday, which we usually do an excellent job of denying. About the only law that I think relates to the genre is that you should not try to explain, to find neat explanations for what happens, and that the object of the thing is to produce a sense of the uncanny. Freud, in his essay on the uncanny, wrote that the sense of the uncanny is the only emotion which is more powerfully expressed in art than in life, which I found very illuminating. It didn't help writing the screenplay, but I think it's an interesting insight into the genre. You should never attempt to explain what happens, as long as what happens simulates people's imagination, their sense of the uncanny, their sense of anxiety and fear. My idea of doing it as a nightmare comedy came in the early weeks of working on the screenplay. What could be more absurd than the very idea of two megapowers willing to wipe out all of human life because of an accident, spiced up by political differences that will seem as meaningless to people 100 years from now as the theological conflicts of the Middle Ages appear to us today. I've got a peculiar weakness for criminals and artists. Neither takes life as it is. Any tragic story has to be in conflict with things as they are. The idea that social restraints are all bad is based on a utopian and unrealistic vision of man. But in this movie, A Clockwork Orange, you have an example of social institutions gone a bit berserk. Obviously, social institutions, faced with the law and order problem, might choose to become grotesquely oppressive. The movie poses two extremes. It shows Alex in his pre-civilized state, and society committing a worse evil in attempting to cure him. cynicism, loss of spiritual values, 2 world wars, the communist disillusionment, psychoanalysis, have forced the 20th century writer to keep his hero uninvolved, detached, burdened with problems relating to life. If the modern world could be summed up with a single word, it would be absurd. The only true creative response to this is the comic version of life. Ghost stories appeal to our craving for immortality. If you can be afraid of a ghost, then you have to believe that a ghost may exist. And if a ghost exists, then oblivion might not be the end.